The rain drizzled softly against the tall glass windows of Rosewood Cafe, a cozy little place in the heart of the city. On a corner table, near the window, sat a little girl in a wheelchair. Her name was Sophie Bennett, daughter of Jonathan Bennett, the city's most talked about CEO. In the business world, Jonathan was a man of power, wealth, and influence. But today, he wasn't here. In front of Sophie sat a small pink cake with 7 candles. The flame flickered gently, but there was no one to sing "Happy Birthday." The waitstaff looked over occasionally, but they were too busy to stop. Customers passed by, glancing, then looking away. Sophie stared at the cake, her hands resting quietly on her lap. She had been paralyzed from the waist down since a car accident 2 years ago, a night that also took her mother. Her father, since then, had buried himself in work. He provided everything, except his presence. Just as she leaned forward to blow out the candles, alone, a voice broke through the background hum of the cafe. "Excuse me," a man said softly, holding the hand of a small boy. "Can we join you?" Sophie looked up. The man wore a slightly wrinkled shirt and carried the air of someone who had rushed from somewhere important. His son, about her age, had bright, curious eyes. Sophie hesitated. I guess so." The man smiled warmly. "Thanks. I'm Daniel, and this is my son, Noah. We were just about to grab some dessert, but this looks like a much better plan." Within minutes, Noah was pulling up a chair beside her. Daniel waved over a server, ordered 2 plates, and began cutting slices of Sophie's cake as if they'd known each other forever. "Happy birthday, Sophie," Noah said, grinning. "I wish I had a wheelchair too, it's like your own personal race car." Sophie laughed, the sound surprising even herself. It had been months since she'd laughed that freely. As they ate, Daniel shared how he was a single dad. His wife had passed away 3 years ago, and money was tight. They didn't have much, but they had each other. "You know," Daniel said gently, "sometimes the best birthdays aren't about how many people show up, but about having the right ones there." Sophie's smile faltered. "Dad was supposed to come. But he's in a meeting." Daniel's eyes softened. Meetings end. But moments like these, they don't come back. Before Sophie could answer, Noah suddenly pulled something from his backpack, a small, lopsided paper crown. "Here. You're the birthday queen now." He placed it on her head. And for the first time in years, Sophie felt seen, not as the CEO's daughter, or the girl in the wheelchair, but as Sophie. Halfway through the cake, the cafe door swung open. Jonathan Bennett stepped inside, rain on his coat, eyes scanning until they landed on her. His expensive watch gleamed under the lights, but his face was unreadable. He walked over quickly. "Sophie. I'm so sorry I'm late." The meeting ran over and he stopped when he noticed Daniel and Noah. Sophie looked at her father, then at her new friends. "Dad, this is Daniel and Noah. They saved my birthday." Something in Jonathan's expression shifted. He looked at the empty chairs he should have been sitting in, at the 2 strangers filling the space he'd left. Then, quietly, he asked, "Mind if I join too?" What started as an awkward arrangement became hours of laughter. Jonathan listened more than he spoke. He watched his daughter's eyes light up, her cheeks flushed with joy. He saw the life he'd been too busy to notice. When it was time to leave, Jonathan thanked Daniel sincerely, even slipping his business card into his hand. "Not for business," he said. "Just, for friendship. I think we could all use more of that." That night, Sophie didn't just blow out her candles. She made a wish that came true before the day was even over. Because sometimes, the family you need doesn't arrive by bloodline or planning. Sometimes, they just pull up a chair, share a slice of cake, and remind you that you're not alone. And as Jonathan walked beside his daughter's wheelchair toward the car, he quietly promised himself, no more missed birthdays. The rain had stopped by the time they reached the car, leaving the streets smelling fresh and new. Sophie's small hands gripped the armrests of her wheelchair as her father bent down, looking her directly in the eyes. "You know," he said softly, "I've built a lot of things in my life. Companies. Deals. Partnerships. But nothing matters more than this." His voice wavered just slightly as he placed his hand over hers. "I've missed too much, Sophie. I won't miss any more." She studied him for a moment, unsure if this was another one of his promises that would fade by morning. But then she saw something in his eyes, a kind of tenderness she hadn't seen since before the accident. In the rearview mirror, as Jonathan drove them home, Sophie caught her reflection wearing the paper crown. It was bent at the edges, a little crooked, but it made her feel like she belonged somewhere special. When they pulled into the driveway, Jonathan surprised her by saying, "Tomorrow, let's have another party. You can invite Daniel, Noah, anyone you want. And this time, I'll bake the cake." Sophie laughed. "You bake? That I have to see." Jonathan smiled, and for the first time in years, it wasn't the polished, CEO smile he wore for the public, it was real. Across the city, in a modest apartment, Daniel tucked Noah into bed. Noah, still excited, whispered, "Dad, today was the best. We made a new friend." Daniel nodded, brushing his son's hair back. "Yeah, we did. And maybe, just maybe, we helped someone remember what really matters." That night, Sophie fell asleep with the crown still on her head. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years, as if someone had opened a window in a room she hadn't realized was locked. Some birthdays bring presents. This one brought people, and that was a gift she'd carry forever. The next morning, sunlight streamed through Sophie's bedroom window, landing on the paper crown that still sat on her nightstand. She picked it up, smiling to herself as the events of yesterday replayed in her mind. Downstairs, she could hear unfamiliar clattering in the kitchen. When she wheeled herself in, she found her father standing at the counter, sleeves rolled up, reading a recipe from his phone while a cloud of flour hovered in the air. "Morning, birthday queen," he said, glancing over his shoulder with a sheepish grin. "Turns out baking is harder than it looks." Sophie laughed. "I'm just impressed you're not on a call right now." Jonathan froze for a second, then set his phone face down on the counter. "No calls today. I told my assistant I'm out of office." The words felt strange coming from him, but they were exactly what Sophie needed to hear. By afternoon, Daniel and Noah arrived, carrying a bag of balloons and a jar of homemade lemonade. Noah ran straight to Sophie. "I brought sprinkles for the cake. I think all cakes need sprinkles." The kitchen became a mess of laughter, spilled flour, and confetti-colored sugar. Jonathan even let Noah crack an egg, though most of it landed on the counter. When the cake was finally in the oven, they all sat in the living room, talking as if they'd known each other for years. Jonathan listened to Daniel's stories about single parenthood, the challenges and small victories. For once, he wasn't thinking about quarterly earnings or stock prices, just about the way his daughter's smile lit up the room. When the cake was done, it was slightly lopsided, but Sophie declared it perfect. They lit the candles again, and this time, the room was full of voices singing just for her. As she made her wish, she looked around, at her father, at Daniel, at Noah, and realized she didn't need to wish for company or happiness anymore. It was already here. She closed her eyes, blew out the candles, and thought instead, "Please, let it stay like this."